friends. Welcome back. I am so glad that you're here. So, before we get too deep in today's episode, I want to chat with you real quick. Over the past few weeks, gearing up to the launching of this podcast, as episode one was last week, yay! I've had so many people reach out to tell me how excited they are about my stepping out and doing this. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much to you, all of you who have supported me and are sharing in this excitement. I really hope that this podcast truly makes a difference. One thing that I do want to mention is that even though most of the topics of this podcast are going to include toddlers and early childhood age, the conversations that we will be having are actually going to be geared towards multiple populations. And the advice that I plan to give, I'm hoping you can take with you and share throughout your entire caseload and with all of your coworkers, parents, and all of that. I'm just really excited to be here, and I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. Okay, enough with the sappiness. Let's get on with today's episode. All right. So today I have a question for you. How do you support language development in early childhood? Let's talk about how we can talk about language development whenever it comes to our toddlers. First of all, I want to remind you of something very important. Toddlers are not preschoolers, they are not school age children, and they are not infants. So we can't treat them like they are. Now, whenever I first started working with this age group, I found myself setting up the toddlers on my caseload and myself up for failure every single session because I was asking them to do tasks that were beyond their current development abilities. I mean, y'all, it was a tough start. And if you're feeling there, I feel you and I'm here to help you out because I can remember getting to a point in my sessions where I was questioning my own skills. And that is a very sad and scary place to be because you, as a speech pathologist, as an SLPA, as an OT, as whatever your discipline is, even as a parent, you are qualified to do this. Here's what was happening with me at that point. I was not seeing the progress that I expected to see. The toddlers were not paying attention to their tasks that I was presenting, and probably the most daunting was answering parent questions. Something else that made this whole situation tricky was finding resources and information. Y'all, everything I found was either directed at infants or preschoolers. And guess what? Toddlers are neither of those. There are tons of information out there directed at parents and about encouraging toddler development and communicating with toddlers. But when it comes to the flip side, us, the therapist, those resources can be hard to find. Even the research that I've found, y'all, would say that this is an underserved and understudied population. And it was always just like, who's going to do the research on this? Now, it's been several years since that fateful day whenever I realized that I was asking too much of the toddlers. And over the course of time, continuous research, and a ton of trial and error later, I have actually divided the ability to improve communication and language development in toddlers into three easy to use categories. I like to keep things simple. Life is always easier that way. And I have to laugh because the idea of keeping things simple is always brilliant. But whenever it comes to putting it into practice, it can be really tricky, right? However, with these three categories, you really can. It can really be simple, I promise. So, elements of each of these categories can be implemented into everyday routines. They work with any and all speech therapy goals, probably a lot of OT and even PT goals. And they are easy enough that parents can do it whenever you're not there. These three categories are talking to toddlers, reading with toddlers, and playing with toddlers. Sounds simple, right? Very simple. Okay, so let's start with talking to toddlers. Now, I used to tell people to be the Morgan Freeman of your child's life because he narrates a ton of documentaries and TV shows and actions that others are doing in these shows. But to be honest with y'all, he's kind of monotone. So I'm switching it up a little bit. And a better way to describe this is to be the Miss Rachel of your child's life. Shout out to the wonderful Miss Rachel and the lives that she is changing every single day. Miss Rachel is happy, she's animated, and she's engaging to toddlers because her songs are catchy and she introduces toddlers to new concepts. It sounds crazy, but y'all, look at her. It works. Here's the important thing about the talking with the toddlers. You want to be animated, you want to be exciting, you want to be engaging, and you want to be fun. Not to ruffle any feathers here, but there is a huge difference between show me the cow and can you find the cow? Moo. Okay, if you or a parent are not accustomed to talking to little ones this way, doing it can make you feel completely ridiculous. But you know what? That's okay, my friend, because I promise the day that the toddlers start responding back to you or imitating you or becoming, exciting and animated themselves because you did it, it changes everything. Something else that's important about talking with toddlers is that it provides so many opportunities for introducing them to meaningful language and communication in the tasks that they're doing simply by using functional vocabulary and providing opportunities for them to respond. The important thing about talking with the toddlers is not forgetting to respond to their response. Okay. Like, this is where sometimes people get tripped up, is that they don't really understand what a toddler response can look like. So, here, let's talk about what that could be. Number one is they don't have to be verbal. Toddler responses do not have to be verbal for them to acknowledge that they heard you and that they're waiting for you to respond back to them. Their responses can be as simple as the toddler looking at the object that you're talking about. They may turn their head and look at your direction. They may point to something. They may turn their head and look at the direction of the object that you are asking them to find. They may reach for it, or they may just vocalize in response to what you are saying. This is a very limited example of what a toddler response can look like, because there are just so many different things that toddlers can do in response to you communicating with them. The important thing to remember is that when you notice a toddler has given you some type of response, including if they are just running away because they're not interested in what you want to do, or they don't understand what you're trying to get them to do, they don't understand the task, you also can respond to that, like in a positive manner, in a acknowledging that, oh, okay, either they don't understand what I'm doing or they don't want to do this. So let's go see if we can find something that they can do, sort of way. Responding to their response is so important. Talking to them about things and then responding to them. It's so important. Talking through activities not only exposes toddlers to different aspects of language and communication development, it is also majorly beneficial to speech sound development, which we can talk about in a later episode because I don't want to keep you here forever. So, what are some things that we can do that we can expose them to? Well, some really great examples would be prosodic features of language using sing-song voices, descriptors, working on expanding utterances, recognizing vocabulary, new vocabulary, and conversational or turn-taking exchange. Now, this strategy can be implemented into any routine because we talk all day, every day, right? I'm talking to you right now. You may be responding back to me and things that I'm saying, even though I can't hear you. So, because this can be implemented into any routine, parent carryover is a total breeze. You just have to get them on board with using the exciting language aspects and just being able to talk to basically essentially themselves until their toddler begins to consistently vocalize or communicate back to them. You can do this by encouraging parents to talk to their toddlers and also show them how to engage in books and different play activities using exciting and different voices. Which leads me to strategy number 2, reading. Now, I can spend an entire episode talking about this, and honestly, I will. It's in a couple of weeks. But for now, we're just going to keep it, what are we going to do? Broad and simple, just like we do everything else with toddler speech therapy. Reading activities are so important because they impact so many different areas of development. Did you know that? Oftentimes, whenever I bring up the topic of reading and toddlers in the same sentence, people laugh or they say things like, they don't even stop and look at books. Like, they just want to flip through the pages. They won't let me see the words on the page. Yeah, right. He's not going to sit still for that. Like, she doesn't even let me read the words on the page. Here's the deal though. Here's the deal. Reading activities don't always look like sitting quietly together and reading a book. Honestly, with toddlers, it probably won't look that way for quite some time, unless you have a toddler who has been exposed to reading from an early age. Oftentimes, the babies who are exposed to reading and they read with their parents every day and they have access to the books all of the time, by the time they reach toddlerhood, they are a little more apt to sit and look at a book for an extended amount of time with you. But even then, it could still be really quick. Like, you're probably not going to get through all the words on the page. But just remember, that's okay. We're going to talk about this later, I promise. So instead, let's look at reading activities as a perfect time to practice other skills. Let's make reading activities about something other than sitting and looking at a book. They are a perfect time to practice conversational exchanges, joint attention skills, pointing at things, vocabulary, and even listening. And what do all of those concepts have in common? They build communication. I'm telling y'all, reading with babies and toddlers is so dang important. And I love this topic so much, like I said, that I've actually written an entire blog series about the importance of reading. You can find it at the slpnextdoor.com. I also have a guide of how to read to toddlers if you'd like to get a little bit ahead of that. And I would highly suggest you take a look at those blog posts. I can link those below. Okay, the final category of activities that encourage language development is one that we all love, especially whenever it comes to working with toddlers, babies, preschoolers, all the things. Play. Here's a quote for you. Play is the work of childhood. Who knows who said that? If you said Mr. Rogers, congratulations. You're officially old. Just kidding. Full quote is, play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is learning. Play is really the work of childhood. There are so many different levels to play. All you have to do is search developmental play or how does play develop, and a ton of articles will come up for you. For this population and for the sake of this podcast, I am going to talk about the developmental levels of play. I have a lot to share whenever it comes to using play in therapy activities to increase communication and developmental skills, which is also another upcoming podcast episode. So for today, what are we going to do? That's right, keep it broad and keep it simple. Developing and using play as a means for learning is super important because it is something that toddlers do pretty much instinctively. When toddlers play, they learn, they explore, and they develop their skills. More importantly, whenever you join in a toddler's play, it puts you into their world and helps you sort of see things through their perspective. Playing with toddlers is about following their lead, going where they go, and engaging in their world. Like I said, I'm going to talk about this in a lot more detail in an upcoming episode. All right, let's recap these three categories. Talk to your toddlers, read with your toddlers, play with your toddlers. I told you, it's going to be simple, right? Life is better simple. These three categories are broad and they can encompass a ton of activities in a variety of settings. More importantly, they are things that parents and caregivers and even us as a therapist are already doing, even if we don't realize it. When it comes to encouraging toddler language development, we want to encourage parents and caregivers to build on the skills that toddlers already have. If you listened to last week's episode, that should sound really familiar. All right, my friend. It was so much fun chatting with you today. Please come back next week for even more tips for toddler development. And don't forget, you can get your hands on all of these handouts totally free from today's topics in the toddler toolbox at the slpnextdoor.com/toolbox.